Compañeros, welcome to the SQL Data Partners podcast, the podcast dedicated to SQL Server-related topics, which is designed to help you become familiar with what's out there, how you might use those features, or ideas on how you might apply them in your environments. I am Carlos L. Chacon.
And I am Steve Stedman. We are two data professionals trying to help others get a better handle on their database environments, either through this podcast, our training, or our consulting practice. Thanks for joining us on the SQL Trail. Welcome to the show.
SQL Data Partners.
Compañeros, it's nice to have you on the SQL Trail again.
Yes, and welcome to episode number 117. This is welcome to episode number 117. This is our past summit retrospective episode.
Yeah.
Which I'll tell you, we got to meet a lot of compañeros last week.
Yes, and it was great meeting a lot of you and getting to chat with you. So I feel like we've been doing a couple of retrospectives here, but you know, it is the conference season, and so we're kind of giving our take on our thoughts around the conference, what went well, and what we enjoyed.
Yep.
Being out there in Seattle.
And I know I say last week, but yeah, it was last week when we're recording this, but it'll be 2 weeks back when it actually airs. So
that's right. Man, how time flies.
Yep. Yeah, and I guess with you being on the East Coast and me being on the West Coast, we don't have that many opportunities where we're actually physically in the same location. That's
right. We did, and again, I guess you'll see as we kind of get into this, just some of the activities that we had. But our schedule was jam-packed and some client.
Yeah, maybe next.
Didn't have as much time as I was hoping. And so, for example, we didn't get to do an episode, I don't want to say live, but face-to-face.
Right.
Which had been something that, you know, we kind of thought about, but didn't well. And so, you know, but this works. And hopefully the compañeros will enjoy it.
Yeah, maybe next time we'll have to have you come a day early or something just to do that.
Yes, that's right.
Or I'll go a day early depending on where we're going to.
Right. There you go. There's always next year, right? It sounds like a bad sports team, right? You know. Okay, so getting into some compañero shoutouts, and because of Summit and running into so many of you, we're actually going to break this up a little bit. So if we don't mention your name now, don't freak out just yet, because we may be working some of that into the actual story or our retrospective. Who I think I miscorrectly identified as being from Georgia. His Twitter account says he's in Alabama. But anyway, it was good to connect with Justin. I had met him 2 years ago. I think it was his first summit back then, and it was good to reconnect with him.
And we've got Tom Norman on the list too. Now, I don't remember meeting Tom. Do you?
Yeah, so he wasn't at our trail mix, but I did run into him at the opening social, and he was getting ready. He was a buddy, and so we chatted. Tom is here from the East Coast. And it was nice to connect with him again.
Okay.
Now, another one that we both talked to kind of in sessions, so actually in the convention center, and it's Brent Unra. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that right. He told me how to pronounce it, and I hopefully I'm getting that right, Brent. But Brent U on Twitter, and he's the one who brought us the question,
wasn't it?
That you still choose flying if you could only go 3 miles an hour.
Oh yeah, that was a long time back on the podcast SQL Family section, wasn't it?
That's right. So a long-time listener, Brent. Thanks for reaching out and connecting with us.
Yep. And then we also talked with Andy Levy from Rochester.
Yes. And we'll probably bring him back up maybe when we get to the sessions. But nice to meet him, contributor on the DBA Tools team. And so it was nice to connect with him.
Yep. And I know he and I have been back and forth on LinkedIn a little bit since the conference talking about Database Health Monitor.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Very good. Another DBA Tools regular is Konstantin Kokonos. It was good to meet him. And he's the one who got me the, so I guess Andy had them. It was one who brought them, but the I love the DBA Tools.
Yep. Oh,
got me the, so I guess Andy had them. it was one who brought them, but the I love the DBA tools ribbons. So
yeah, there were quite a few members of the DBA tools group there, and it was good to meet Constantine.
Yes, I don't think Claudio was there, but I did talk with Rob. Unfortunately, I did not meet Chrissy. I wanted to do that, but that for whatever reason didn't happen.
Oh yeah, I got to meet Chrissy in the speaker room. We were sort of there practicing. I heard her talking, and I did not know what she looked like, but I just totally recognized her voice from the podcast.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so I got to say hi and met her there as well.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Yep.
A couple of our MVPs we want to give shout outs to. So Argenis Fernandez, Brent Ozar, Kathy Kellenberger. So thanks for coming out to the Trail Mix event and talking with us, giving some of your thoughts. I know
groups to get to know there.
That's right. Sean Berry is another one. Good to meet him. Kevin Wilkie, longtime supporter and previous guest on the show. Adam Jacobson, who is actually someone who was introduced us to a client and happened to be there. And so it was nice to be able to catch up with him.
Yep. And I did not get to talk to him as much as I would have liked to, but we did talk briefly. Yes.
And that was a reoccurring theme, I think, for Summit and that was a surprise. I mean, particularly with the podcast, and that's really where, and the SQL Saturdays, I mean, I feel like I want to be connected, right? That's one of the things I want people to know me for, if you will, is being connected. And I was surprised at just how many people I wasn't able to talk to.
Right.
I saw in passing, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to follow up with them. And then I'm at home, right?
Yeah. Well, on that point, you talk to some people and they think, oh, you're going to a conference for the week. It's like a vacation, time to relax.
And to understand the
you talk to some people and they think, oh, you're going to a conference for the week. It's like a vacation, time to relax. But holy cow, it was busy. It never stopped. It seemed like, and which is awesome. I really enjoyed it, but it's certainly no vacation. It's busy.
That's right. And then trying to, and then from our perspective as well, we're trying to, like everyone, I'm not saying this is unique to us, but trying to understand the ramifications of all the new features, that Microsoft is dumping out there on us, the keynotes. We had that keynote on the Cosmos DB. That's something that I think all of us are trying to understand. Okay, how, what's our future going to be like, right? What's us all looking like? And understanding some of those concepts, that takes brain cycles as well, right?
Yep. And speaking of that future, does that bring us right into SQL Server in the news?
It does. Yes. Let's do a little SQL Server in the news. So we ran into Travis and Travis Wright. So he's the PM for the Linux migration, and I'm not exactly sure how his role has evolved. I think that's something he's still doing. But we were chatting, and of course they mentioned many of the new features, which we won't cover all of them today. We'll save some of those and kind of spread them out for future episodes. But he mentioned to me, and he said that they may be announcing, with everything that they've just put out, and SQL Server obviously became live at the beginning of the month, they're going to announce vNext as potentially as early as next week.
Wow. So if you're not on SQL Server 2017 yet, you will soon be behind.
Yeah, that's right. You just wait to 2018.
vNext will be taking over in the near future, perhaps 2018.
Yeah. So again, just kind of continuing that they're trying to integrate there, and what the monumental challenge that is.
Oh yeah. And it's really interesting because, part of it is there's so many new things going into SQL Server at the rate it's going at right now.
Right.
And other like Azure related databases and things that,
sure.
It's really tough to figure out, okay, what are the things that are really going to stick and are going to be the fundamental pieces that we're going to need to know going forward? And what are the things that are, maybe a little bit of hype and maybe don't end up being that big of a deal?
No, that's right. I think, the comment is we don't need to feel like, and even us, as consultants, I feel like we have we're in a pretty good position because we get to be in lots of different environments and touch some of this new technology sometimes. But a lot of times I can feel like I'm in the Stone Age because, all the new things that people are trying to do and, the cloud this and cloud that. And so, yeah, I think compañeros, you don't, if nothing more, do, and, the cloud this and cloud that. And so, yeah, I think compañeros, you don't need to be afraid. If you're not on VNext, right? Don't despair.
Right. And I think, but that's part of the benefit of the conference too, is you go and you're exposed to a lot of this new information, and it sort of pushes you out of that comfort zone that you've been in for the last couple of years, perhaps.
Sure, exactly. Right. Yeah. And if nothing more, like to be educated about, how things are changing and the types of problems that people are trying to solve. Right. So your current organization may not be trying to solve that problem, but if you find a problem that you're then interested in, again, you're creating value and then trying to go out and solve that for a different place or a different organization, and who knows what will happen. But being in a position to be able to do that is valuable.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so Ultimate and I are doing the retrospective, but we will have some show notes. Now, I would say pictures. And we'll get in, I guess we can get into this a little bit, but we, as busy as we were, you could tell that we're not great social media people. And did not take nearly enough pictures.
Yep. And that's the thing I find when I'm at a conference, it gets so busy. I mean, and I enjoy talking with people. I just don't think to take out the camera and snap a shot.
Sure.
Where like there's others who say, "Oh, look, I got a picture with this person or that person," and wow, I just didn't have time to do that.
Yeah,
I need to make time for that next time.
I think we're showing our age a little bit there, right? We're not the selfie first kind of people.
Yeah.
And that's like, for Twitter. I mean, I like to be on Twitter, put some things out there, but I'm definitely not one of those people that has to put, my every waking moment detail on there.
Right.
So no, that's on there.
Right.
So then you get busy. And if that's not a habit, right? You haven't trained yourself to do that. Then the day goes by and you're like, oops. In fact, today I was actually replying to some tweets that happened during a summit. And so that was kind of embarrassing.
Yep. Yeah. It's like you need an extra 4 hours at the end of each night to go back and just catch up on everything.
No, that's right. Yeah. And my old man disease is already kicking in pretty good, particularly in the West Coast time, right? I'm there in Seattle, or being that my body's on East Coast time, rather.
Yep.
Right. And I'm in Seattle. I mean, I'm ready to go to bed. But the show notes for today's episode are going to be at SQLDataPartners.com/summit.
Or at SQLDataPartners.com/117 for the episode number.
Yeah. So as far as some of the other things that we did, so Tuesday was kind of low key. We actually had some client engagement meetings, so we took advantage of some of that time, particularly with me being on the East Coast, to do a little bit of that. But we did get to check in and started meeting people.
Yep. And on Tuesday night there was the welcome reception for everyone. We went to that. That was a lot of fun and got to see a number of people that I hadn't seen in a year or so.
Yes. And if you missed me, I am sorry. I was trying to stand out as much as possible in the Mardi Gras suit.
Right. Now, some people might have thought you were an entertainer of some kind with that suit, Carlos, rather than actually an attendee.
Yes, I was accused more than once. Are you hired? Nope.
Yeah.
Just me.
Yeah. Well, that was a pretty awesome suit. And if you haven't seen Carlos in his, Mardi Gras suit, we could call it.
Yes, that's right.
Take a look online. There are some pictures of him in that.
Yes, we'll make sure that we get those up on.
There are some pictures of him in that.
Yes, we'll make sure that we get those up on social media. Now, one thing I thought was interesting, and I don't remember. Now, I missed last year's summit. I don't remember them doing live music at the welcome. And
no, and that was different because last year I think it was. There was not a live band last year. It was recorded music, and they were doing like slideshow or something like that, I think, last year.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I thought that was that. I mean, nice to have live music, but at the same time, it made it a little difficult to hear sometimes.
Right. And when you're standing chatting with someone and you realize that it's so loud, you've got to be like 6 inches from their face just to hear them.
Right.
It makes it tough to communicate. Right. So if I had any say in it, I'd love to say, Maybe we're getting old, but turn down the music. That sounds like an old man story there.
Yeah, are we going to have to rename this the Old Man Review?
Wow, I guess we're showing through.
Review.
Wow, I guess we're showing through.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. It's one of those things like, I don't know if we could have a little bit more time. And of course, people come in and out of that as well, right? So,
Yep.
But maybe pausing that music or, giving us an hour, right, before it plays. I mean, I know they did take a rest, but I don't know. So,
and then of course, Tuesday night was the volunteer party.
Yes. And so again, more old man. So I stayed at the welcome reception a little longer than you did. And I know you and Derek went over to that. I did not want to walk over there. And I guess I was too cheap to take an Uber. And so, and that's what it was. Andy Leonard actually gave me a book. So I had this book that I'm like, okay, what the heck am I going to do with that? So I ended up taking it back to the hotel room to drop it off.
It is a couple of things. One, free food. And also getting to know or getting to meet some of the other speakers, some of the other past chapter leaders, some of the other volunteers. And it's a great group of people. And I guess what I would say is sign up and volunteer in some way if you're not part of that, because then you could be part of it.
Yes, that's right. And now you ran into the Costa Rican guys, right? The Hispanic guys.
Yeah, there were, I guess, 4 or 5 of them that were there. And I think I ran into them at that same party last year. And good group of guys, bright guys from Costa Rica.
Yeah. Yeah, good times. Now, I did then make the mistake of then trying to go out afterwards, and because the DBA Tools team had like a little reception I saw on Twitter. I'm like, oh, that's just right here. I'll go to the block. When I got there, they were actually all headed to SQL Karaoke, which I then felt stupid because I just gotten there and like it was ending. So here I didn't want to, as I got to meet in headed to SQL Karaoke, which I then felt stupid because I just gotten there and like it was ending. So here I didn't want to walk right to the volunteer thing. So then I ended up walking all the way to SQL Karaoke. And if you know where that is, it was like, on the borders of Seattle. And, so I walked a lot more than I wanted to that evening, but it was all good. So one of the guys I got to meet in line actually, because again, feeling stupid again, because I didn't really have to have a ticket to get into SQL Karaoke. So there was that whole thing. But SQL Beats, not SQL Beats? SQL Beats is Rodney from Florida, the guy who wrote the SQL Server 2016 song.
Oh, yeah. I'm forgetting his name, but yeah, he was at the SQL Saturday in Redmond last year.
Right. So he was in line there behind me. And so we started chatting and that was a lot of fun.
Musician.
That's right. Well, he'll be up like, okay, y'all, let me see, I'll show you how this is done.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's see. So in the opening reception, another name, Bert Wagner. Now it was funny because I walked up to Bert and I'm like, I know you. I can't remember where I know you, but I feel like we've met. And then it wasn't until Wednesday he actually came to our SQL Trail event. I'm like, now I remember from the sign up list.
Oh yeah, and I remember meeting Bert as well, talking a little bit about his job and what he does, and yeah, definitely cool.
Right. So one of the takeaways and one of the things now. I'm not sure that we're maybe promoting this idea, but we found that watching the keynotes from the hotel is super convenient. Now, that does mean that you kind of miss out on breakfast or you have to, kind of go your own way.
About that was because normally you go to the keynote and it's jam-packed full and it's hard to see. And I mean, depending on where you're sitting, and it can be a challenge. So yeah, sure. Just watching from the live broadcast and watching from the hotel room, then you've got the chance while you're doing that, when they mention something, to go look it up, go online and take a look at it while you're watching it.
Sure.
And I think that I like doing it that way rather than being there where you're just sort of stuck in a seat and glued to the room.
Right. Now we did. I'm not sure if it was my tablet or what. But once we moved over to your laptop, it seemed to be fine. But we did have you do sometimes hit that. There's a bandwidth streaming issues. Yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
But once it got going, it seemed like they were doing Past did a good job on their side to at least make sure that plenty of streams were available.
Yep.
So
then Wednesday, there were some great sessions, and I know I got to see a couple of those. And
streams were available.
Yep.
So
then Wednesday, there were some great sessions, and I know I got to see a couple of those. And then later in the day on Wednesday, we had the SQL Trail Mix event.
Yes. And so this was, we weren't quite sure what to make of this, right? How this is going to turn out. And special thanks here to Sean and Jen McCown. We actually reached out to them to get their thoughts. They've been doing several events there at Summit. And we thought, okay, because you do hear about all of these different events. Would there be room enough for ours?
Would people want to go to ours?
Hey, would people come? That's right.
Yep.
If it's just Steve and I sitting there eating peanuts,
Yep.
So this are all kind of thoughts kind of going through our head. And so we said, okay, well, let's do it. And we'll reach out obviously to the compañeros and to our podcast guests, and we'll kind of go from there. And we were I guess there are a couple that we want to specifically point out here, but we had a great time chatting with you.
Yep. And I think what really surprised me was the small amount of promotion that we did, the small amount of time we had to promote it, and how many people actually showed up in that small amount of promotion time.
Right. And so that is true. And so if you didn't get an invite for whatever reason, so we apologize, because it did fill up way faster than we thought it would. So again, we were kind of thinking 25 people would be super successful. That was kind of our number. We knew some people wouldn't come. We ended up cutting off registration at 45, and that happened in a matter of about 3 hours.
Yep.
So it was super quick.
Yep. And I guess just a little bit of background for those who don't know what the SQL Trail Mix was. This was an event that we hosted where it was a restaurant/bar where we reserved some. Give us feedback. This was an event that we hosted where it was a restaurant/bar where we reserved some space. We got a number of tables, and we bought appetizers for everyone.
Yep.
And although we didn't buy drinks for everyone, everyone was on the hook for their own drinks.
Right.
And it was just show up and chat, show up and meet other podcast listeners, meet other podcast guests, and give us feedback on the podcast. And I had a great time. It was awesome.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was good. And so, for example, rubbing shoulders with James, right? So James Buchanan, he's been on Twitter. We've exchanged emails. He's suggested several podcast topics. And so to finally be able to meet him, rub shoulders with him was pretty cool. The guys from Connecticut, Will Conklin and Chris Albert, longtime listeners of the podcast. So shout out to you guys. Thanks for coming up and chatting with us. And then Josh Samar. I can't remember all of a sudden where Josh is from, but he had mentioned that he's been listening to the podcast, and it was great to chat with him as well.
Yep. And then also Andre Ranieri. And Andre's a friend of mine that I've known through past events for quite a while. And he showed up at the event and had a chance to catch up with him a little bit.
Right. And that was an interesting thing, right? So while we had a registration, and I don't know, we probably ended up with 30 people? Would you say 30, 35 people, something like, because people did kind of come in and out.
Yep.
And so the registration kind of helped, but it didn't indicate everyone. So I guess, there's some thought we need to put into, how to do that. We just wanted to make sure that we could provide, for everyone who did show up. So.
Right. Yep. And I think if we're going to do it again, or I hope we do it again, I think maybe going a little bit bigger, but not massive, would be good.
Yes.
And
well, it was interesting because I think one of the other, which I think kind of worked into our favor potentially, is that we didn't realize that we'd also be going up against a Game 7 World Series game. And I think that impacted just the bar itself, because when we talked to them, they're like, "Oh yeah, our Wednesdays are dead." So why don't you come? It'd be great to have a group. And then we get in there, and I'm like, "This is dead." Like,
oh yeah, it was packed. It really was.
Yeah. But we ultimately would very much like to continue to meet up with you guys, and I'm not sure how well this would work at other events, but if we have opportunities to do something like this, of course we'll try to do it again.
Yep. So then that brings us to Thursday.
Yes, and then that's when Summit got real, in the sense because you had your session, your first
Yep.
of two sessions. Yeah.
Yep. First of two sessions. So this was the first time at Past Summit that I actually had two sessions. First one was on database corruption. And I was on just early afternoon, I think. And it was one of those things where, as a speaker, you always worry about getting connected. At least I do. Is the presentation going to work? Is the laptop going to work and all that? And the laptop I've had for about 2.5 years, I've never had a problem. Everywhere I've gone, you plug it in, it's worked just fine. It's even worked fine at two former Past Summits on similar equipment. So, but still, every time we go, I try it out. There's a speaker ready room that they have to try it out on a projector and make sure it works. Try that all out ahead of time and get there. And it will not, for some reason, the multi-video output will not connect to the projector.
Right.
And of course, I'm the kind of guy when I present that as soon as the previous speaker is off the stage, I am there taking every minute I can to make sure that it's going to work.
Right.
And it didn't work, and for doing that, but make sure that it's going to work.
Right.
And it didn't work, and it didn't work, and it didn't work. And
the AV people came up, and they were trying to help you. And
yep, yeah. And some of our friends, Derek Bovenkamp and Randolph West, I mean, they were in the audience, jumping in, trying to help with try this, try that. Here's a USB stick, things like that. And finally, we're about 7 or 8 minutes late when I started my session, which I apologize for that. And I felt so bad for doing that. But I finally just put it on a USB stick, put it on a different laptop, and did the presentation from PowerPoint on the other laptop.
Right.
And not optimal, but I think that, yeah. What I learned on that, I guess, is be prepared. Oh, back to the Boy Scout motto, right?
Go back to the Boy Scout motto. There you go.
Be prepared, which I thought I was, but be prepared with 2 laptops. And which isn't a financial thing because I had an extra laptop sitting at home I could have prepared and brought with me. But be prepared. Bring two laptops and a backup plan. Because whatever you think might go wrong, whatever could go wrong will go wrong eventually. And it did in that session. I think I got a lot of feedback at the end that people were happy with it, but I just felt bad getting started 7 or 8 minutes late because of that technical difficulty.
Yeah, I mean, thanks to Pass, right, for providing that other laptop, right?
Oh yeah,
that you could the PowerPoint loaded, that you could move over pretty quickly. I think it worked well. The way that you gave that was kind of a story based idea, concepts. It was an introductory session, and so as you told the stories and kind of walk through some of those things, I thought your audience was super interactive, right? They were, engaged. They were, when you would tell a struggle, they made it their own struggle, or you could sense that they had been there, those kinds of things. And so I thought that it went really well.
Yeah. And what was different with that session is it was an introduction to database corruption. So coming in, we took if I had planned that, it wouldn't have gone so well with the technical difficulties we had. But because it was more sort of the high level, what is corruption and how do you deal with it? I think, it worked out there really well. And it was different than how I had presented corruption in the past as well. So I had a good time with it, and I think people enjoyed it. And I got at the end, of course, though, everyone comes up to ask questions to the speaker, and you're trying to get off the stage and all that. And we actually, because there was another speaker coming in, we took the conversation outside to one of the just outside the room and continued for about 20 minutes with different people who had questions about corruption. And it was really cool. I had a good time with that.
Yeah. And I think that's where we ran into Brent as well.
Right.
And so I thought, so good questions. It's always makes you feel good as a speaker, right? When people come up afterwards and, when I continue the conversation.
Yep.
It's a mixed bag, right? As an attendee, you want to get that conversation in, then there's other people in line, right? And you conversation in, then there's other people in line, right? And you want to go off to your next session as well. And then as a speaker, you want to try to accommodate as many people as you can, but we know that some of you probably slipped out without having to have that conversation. And so we apologize. And I think another reason why you want to have an event like that is so that we can have that connection time and, in a little less time constrained environment.
Right. And also, I'd like to give a special thanks on that to Randolph West, because last year at my corruption presentation and this year at the corruption presentation, at the end, when you're done speaking and everyone comes up to ask questions, he helped field some of those questions. And that was really awesome because it gave me a chance to get a drink of water and listen to what some of the other questions were while I was packing up my laptop at the end. So thanks, Randolph. I appreciate that.
Yes, very cool. So Thursday night, a couple of shout outs to the guys that helped organize the game night. Now,
Yeah, and
shout outs to the guys that helped organize the game night. Now, ultimately, this was done through Pass, but Kevin Hill was instrumental, and at least that's how I found out about it. Oh, no, that's not true. I found out about it through you.
right.
But then after investigating it, Kevin Hill was kind of was helping promote it and organize it a bit. And then he and Matt Cushing, one of those I've interacted with on Twitter. It was nice to meet him and shake hands with him.
Yeah, and the game night was interesting because you come in and it's just a bunch of tables and board games. And you first walk in the room and it's a little bit intimidating to look at all the people playing board games and wonder, okay, where am I going to sit down?
Exactly.
And then you just kind of wander around a little bit and I realized, hey, there's a game that's starting right now. I'll jump in and play. And it was awesome.
Right.
I had a good time.
I think that worked really well. I think there was some confusion because people didn't realize they had to pay to go.
Oh, right.
And I think that $12 was to buy it. People liked it, but it did kind of cause some confusion for folks.
Right. And I think, though, also some of the $12 on that game night goes to the cost of the staff coming in and taking down the regular seating and putting up tables, because that was in one of the presentation rooms. So they had people come in and change out the room for that event.
Right. And that makes sense, right? So the venue, there probably was some costs associated with that as well. No, you're exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And then all of a sudden we're at Friday. Oh, well, the other thing I guess I do want to say about Thursday before we get to Friday is that I didn't spend a ton of time in the sponsor area, but Thursday was the day that I was able to do a bit of that. And I guess special shout out to the Windocs guys. So Paul and his team got to meet with his partner and talk with them a little bit. It seemed a little bit smaller this year than in years prior, the sponsor area.
Yeah, and that was interesting, and I wonder why. I think the
area.
Yeah, and that was interesting, and I wonder why. I think the big players were there that you normally see, and they had big booths, and then some of the smaller players that you see, like Sean and Jen from Minionware, and I mean they had their booth there, but it's sort of the overall, it just didn't seem quite as large as what I remember in the past. And maybe it was just a little bit different layout that made it appear that way too.
Yeah, perhaps, right? And on the other side is that we've also gone to some very large conferences, right? So like the Inspire the Microsoft Partner Conference or Ignite, right? So those are like, 25,000 people, conferences. Right. And so all of a sudden you get, that magnitude, right? And not to say that, I think, I can't remember what the attendance was, but between 4,000 and 5,000, not to say that that's small, right? But you're talking about, a quarter of the size. And so they pack things pretty quickly.
So then Friday, so we both had sessions. Yes. And I had a session that was right before lunch, or when was it? Yeah, like 11 to 12:30. So right before lunch.
Right.
And that was on backup and corruption. And although my laptop didn't plug in quite as easily as I had hoped, because I'd spent hours working on it the night before to make sure it was going to work, it worked. It was just something to do with the video switching from full screen PowerPoint over to Management Studio. I had a little bit of difficulty with there, but it was way better than the day before. And the topic was on backup and recovery. And the thing that I had a lot of fun with was a automatic restore script, where when you write your backups, it would write the restore script at the same time. So that if you ever have to recover from backup, you just find the restore script associated with the backup or transaction log file, open it, and then uncomment a couple lines, and you're running your restore. The crowd pleaser, I think, in that presentation. And it was a lot of fun.
Oh, very nice.
Yep.
Yeah, so I was running a bit behind. I know that, I had offered my laptop as a substitute if you needed it. And by the time I got in there, all that was, you were on the agenda. The presentation was fixed. And I mean, your corruption session was full, but the backup session was even fuller. I mean, there was lots of people standing, and I thought,
yeah,
I'm not going to be able to get into this one.
No. So the laptop problem was resolved, and the presentation went smoothly from that perspective.
Right.
So that was a lot of fun. So then your session, Carlos.
Yeah. So I was at the end. And
establishing baselines, right?
Yeah. Yep. Through monitoring or managing performance through baselines was kind of that idea, but taking baselines and thoughts around that idea. And so the last session of the day, I mean, obviously at that point, right, and people are, Summit is now wearing on them, right? Everybody's a bit tired. So thanks, I guess I'll say first, thanks if you were there. So again, to Will and Chris, I know who were there. Of course, you were there. Andy was there. Mariano came. So thanks for you for coming out. I admit this. So this is my first time speaking at Summit. I feel like I do pretty well in group presentations. I've given lots of them and feel at home. I wasn't so nervous until I actually got up on the platform.
Oh.
And for whatever reason, that visual, right? Like I felt, being elevated. It was like, whoa.
Well, I'll tell you, I personally think the last 5 minutes before a session starts, even if everything is ready to go and going smoothly, the last 5 minutes is the stress factor right there.
Yes.
And then once you start talking, I mean, I could see you're getting nervous ahead of time. Once you start talking, then it really smoothed over at that point and everything was cool, I think.
Right. And so to help with some of that, like I tried, which didn't seem to go very well, was creating a PowerPoint or some way to potentially engage the audience a little bit beforehand. Now, I started just asking some questions. So I had a little PowerPoint I call it like where in the world. It's just like a photo. And then the idea was you guess where it was, right? Yeah, that didn't seem to engage too many people, which I thought was curious.
No, but they were a lot of interesting pictures that kept people occupied for that 5 to 10 minutes before the session started.
Right. I guess there is that. Right.
Yeah.
But then once we get in there, I felt, a bit more comfortable. You've given that session several times and that's kind of when the habits start to kick in. I was happy. One thing I was happy about with the session is that we were able to still have some conversation. One of the things that I don't particularly, I shouldn't say care for. No, yeah, I like my style to be a bit more interactive. I feel like if I'm just sitting there, I'm the only one talking in the presentation, that I'm doing something wrong.
Right.
And so I was glad that we were able to get some feedback or at least some comments, right? And kind of start a little bit of dialogue there.
Yeah. And with that, it almost seems like the larger the room is, the more difficult it is to get people to interact because they're almost a little bit afraid to speak out in the bigger room.
No, yeah, exactly. Right. That's right. And so the room is, it wasn't a humongous room, right? Because some of those rooms are big. And I don't remember exactly how many people would fit in there, but we probably had, I don't know, I'm going to say 50 people in there. But that was just like, I think just maybe on that cusp of still people being able to interact with each other. Yeah. Once you get more than that, it is like that backup and recovery session, for example, would have been a lot more difficult to do, I think. So,
but it was a good session.
I think so.
But it was a good session, and I think it was the end of the conference session, which is a tough time slot. But it went really well, and I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, thanks.
And I thought it was one of the things I caught that was really interesting is you're talking about different products and tools, and you bring up DBA tools, and some I forget exactly what feature you mentioned, but something with DBA tools that you demoed, and then Andy Levy, he afterwards comes up, or he said something about it because he works on it. And afterwards he came up and he said he actually worked on that feature that you were showing.
That's right. So he had checked in code. And so to him, it was kind of a cool thing to code that he has worked on has been shown at Summit. So
yeah.
Hey, that's the way, only the best, the compañeros, right? So kind of cool to be able to show work. And then that was it. We kind of went home. Well, we left. We went out to dinner with Derek, and then I headed to the airport.
Yes. So unfortunate story at dinner. We made a new rule that anyone who chokes and needs the Heimlich maneuver has to buy dinner.
Oh man.
Yeah, and
that was a bit scary. So
we sat down for burgers and onion rings, and I took the first bite of an onion ring, and it wasn't even that big of a bite, and somehow it got lodged in my throat. I wasn't breathing. Right. I did not have a working airway at that point, and it
was blocked. I was talking with Derek, and you started kind of making a noise, and I looked at you, and your face was red, and I was like, "Hey, are you okay?" I kind of pat you on the back, and you like looked at your throat, and I was like, oh man, we have a problem.
Yeah.
And we were in a booth, right? Which made it worse. We were sitting next to each other. And I was actually surprised at how quickly you were able to get out of that booth.
I wasn't breathing. I hadn't. I hope that it never happened.
Yes. And so, yeah, that Boy Scout training kind of coming back and, engaging. And so, yeah, that was a bit of a scary moment.
Yeah. So very special thanks on that one, Carlos. I really appreciated that. And I ended up buying dinner because of it.
Well, we're glad that you're still here. And we hope that we never have to invoke that rule at dinner again.
Yes, I hope that it never happens again either, to me or anyone I'm dining with.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
But what a way to finish off the week.
That's right, with a bang. That's for sure. Ultimately, that was our conference, and we appreciate you compañeros for sharing. Those who were there, for those of you who weren't, we'll hope to connect with you at some other time.
Yes, and maybe next year at our next SQL Trail Mix.
That's right. Yep. Okay, so I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Our music for SQL Server in the News is by Mansardi and used under Creative Commons. You can reach the show notes for today's episode again at SQLDataPartners.com/summit
or at SQLDataPartners.com/117.
And as always, if you have thoughts about what you want us to be talking about on the podcast, you can reach out to us on various social media methods. One of them being LinkedIn. You can reach out to me. I'm Carlos L. Chacon.
And you can get me on LinkedIn as Steve Stedman. And we'll see you on the SQL Trail.
SQL Data Partners.